Hello, friends, and welcome to the Ian Khan Show. You're watching an Aftershock special episode. Today, I'm interviewing Richard Browning, who's the founder and chief test pilot of Gravity Industries. Launched in March 2017, his dream behind Gravity Industries was to reimagine human flight and with an elegant partnership between mind, body, machine, and exploiting leading-edge technology. Let's hear it from Richard Browning. Richard, welcome to the Ian Khan Show. I am so excited to have you here, and you're one of the trailblazers today. A lot to talk about. Tell me what's going on right behind you. What's happening right now?
Yes, very topical. So my wife here and we are building these. They are virus masks. So in other words, they're sort of the PPE, personal protective equipment masks. There you go, perfectly demonstrated. We are 3D printing the structure, the supported structure in that printer there, and then there's a bit of a manual process of punching the holes and constructing them. So yes, on a bank holiday Friday afternoon, we are not slowing down in our production of the thing. So
I love it.
The activity in the back.
Oh my God, I love it. And I love this is a very environmental interview. You're in your environment. You're doing the thing that you do, and that makes it so much more interesting. Now, you started your career. Let's talk a little bit about your early career. You started as an oil trader. You worked in the oil and gas industry for about 15, 16 years. It's a very different industry, but I'm guessing inside you were always who you are right now, correct?
I think so. I mean, in summary, my career in the industry, in the oil industry, was somewhat, if I'm really honest, driven by, I suppose, the opportunity to build a financial safety net and, I suppose, build enough of a cushion, really, in hindsight, to then go after more of my passions later in life. My childhood was an interesting journey, and it led me to, I suppose, highly value building that security safety net that a career like that would do. What I've gone on to do with Gravity is, I guess, a lot closer to my heart in terms of going on that journey of building, making, creating, and taking on an unusual, barely possible challenge and hopefully dragging it over the line. I love that process, despite the fact that most of the time you fail. It's all about building that safety net, really, in hindsight. Not that I really thought about it at the time.
Yeah. Now with Gravity, you're doing something really incredible. It's just so different. It's just so incredible. It's a very innovative thing. You're breaking boundaries of thought, of perception. This is somewhat, what happened in the first flight ever, that we had this huge mental block that it couldn't be done. And then human flight took over, the first flight took over. What was the process of kind of going through those initial phases of failure, which I'm sure you went through? Tell us a little bit about your journey of starting off with the idea of Gravity and then doing those tests where you failed. Yeah.
So the inspiration was from a number of different sources, really. One of them was from my time in the British Royal Marines Reserve, UK division of the military that called the Royal Marines, and there's quite stringent physical and mental tests to get through there. They're sort of same flavor as the Navy SEAL kind of process. And that taught me a lot about human capabilities. So the whole process of seeing a challenge, mental or physical or both physical challenge, and then believing that you can overcome those obstacles and realizing that the human brain and body is an amazing machine that can be adapted to fulfill quite a ridiculous range of often quite challenging tasks if you really, focus on it. And so I took that as I suppose, part of the inspiration. The other part came from my childhood, that when I grew up, used to go flying model gliders with my late father. He was an aeronautical engineer, and most of my family were from the world of aviation and actually helicopters as well. And I suppose I sort of married those two things together and came up with this hypothesis that I wonder if you could employ the human brain from a balance and control point of view and the body from a strength point of view and tackle the challenge of human flight in an entirely different, seemingly illogical, crazy way. And genuinely for no reason other than the joy of the challenge. I just thought, wouldn't it be kind of neat if you could, instead of leaning on, say, this desk here, you can't see, I'm leaning on this desk, the feeling, the support the desk provides my hands, if you swap that out for the momentary support that a form of propulsion from a jet engine or a propeller of some kind will give you, then I knew from my training that I could support my body weight in a variety of different sort of gymnastic positions. So, well, doesn't that mean I can then kind of support myself as I lift off the ground? And I just for the pure joy of the challenge, how far can you go with that concept? And that was really it.
I'm just trying to do a couple of things by asking you these questions. One is really break the idea that sometimes we just cannot do things. In today's time where COVID-19 is out there, we're just facing an unprecedented kind of a change that we're dealing with. And I think life and success and breaking through something, a barrier is all about overcoming that fear of change or coming through it or somehow surpassing it. And learning from experiences you're talking about is also dealing with a lot of change because you've constantly got it reiterated. So that was your initial journey, starting off with the idea, with the concept, and then bringing this to fruition. I know you're doing a lot of test flights. I've seen you at a few expos. You've done a lot of face-to-face interactions with people where they're actually able to see you. I saw you flying off a ship somewhere as well in the middle of the ocean, I believe. Are you going through a phase of helping people understand this as a reality right now? Where are you where you want to be, to where you want to be?
I mean, what has ended up happening, back in 2016, when I, for about 8 months, went from the idea to actually first flying this, I got a phone call when we then launched the company. We came up with the name Gravity, the brand Gravity, as a sort of package within which to sort of share this with the world, because the few people who come to see it had kind of lost their minds more than I'd imagined. And I thought, well, let's just experiment with sharing this with the world and just throw it out there and see what happens. And we launched it with Red Bull and Wired. Both of those brands were very valuable in terms of propelling us in the desired direction. And within a week, I got a phone call from Chris Anderson from TED, who said, could you come and do TED 2017 in Vancouver, and could I fly there? Bearing in mind, I'd not even flown outside of the farmyard test zone we'd been using. I still said yes and thought, gosh, that's a great privilege. I've been a huge admirer of TED Talks for years. On the way there, I stopped off in San Francisco to accept an invitation from Adam and Tim Draper, who I didn't really know who they were at the time. Did a demonstration in their VC car park, the Boost VC car park. In fact, I'm wearing one of Adam's old T-shirts as the Boost VC logo, as it happens. And landed the very first demo, anywhere. I'd packed it all into 2 check-in suitcases to take this thing the other side of the world from the UK. And Tim and Adam lost their minds and wrote me a $640,000 deal on a $100 bill that's pinned to my lab wall back over there. And that was the beginning of the journey that said, gosh, okay, this is starting to have impact. And then a week later did TED and did a talk there on the same day as Elon Musk and Pope, and then did a demonstration in front of everybody, including Richard Branson and that kind of crowd. And yeah, it all worked. Adam Savage was my impromptu ground crew on the day. It was just this ridiculous fairy tale, really. And then since then, we've leveraged events quite significantly. So we've now done 103 separate events in 30 countries. In fact, if I just swivel my camera slightly, so those are some of the lanyards up there that, look at that.
I can see that. Wow.
That we've ended up collecting. And they've been a gift, really, because, I've done 5 TED Talks now and all these events all over the world, including a dozen different military events, flying around aircraft carriers, and the kind of things you'd never imagine we get asked to do. The benefit of all of these has been to be able to battle test the equipment in front of different audiences, in different environments, at different altitudes, in different locations. You name a desert or a sea or a city or when I say altitude, I mean like Johannesburg and the mountains in Arizona. Both of them are about 6,000 feet, and we've flown there, which has a major effect on the gas turbine. So we've flown in all sorts of different locations and in front of live audiences, often quite, high-end folks. We've flown for Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos as well. So in fact, actually, you have to pause on that one. That's one of the victims of the virus. That was an event we were supposed to be doing that's now on pause, that will come back again alive. But that kind of caliber of people have seen me fly and then, and also got equally excited. So what an amazing opportunity to kind of poll people's opinion, that when you bring something so new to them, what's the first thing that springs to their mind? Are they excited? Do they want to buy one? Do they want to have a go at training to learn to do it? Do they want to go and watch a race series with these things? I mean, and all of those are the things we're going on and doing. And also, most of these events have paid us a lot of money. So we've generated all our own revenue since that first Draper event, and it's all gone plowed back into the R&D, and we've got a decent team of people and built that major, momentum and patented it all. And yeah, it's been quite an unusual last 3 years since we launched.
That's incredible. It's such an incredible journey. And I'm glad that it's, you're everybody's being exposed to this radical idea of just taking off and flying and imagining what to do with it. Now, in terms of an organizational structure, we see you flying with the suit. Richard has the suit on. He's flying up in the air. What is the team that works with you? How many people work on this every day? Like, how do things work? And I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help our audiences understand there's a structure behind things. You've got to be able to take deliberate structural steps in order to create a business, to be successful, to do whatever. Give us an idea, whatever you can share with respect to what kind of a team backs you up in doing this.
I mean, it was a fairly solo journey when I first developed this, but then very quickly I've collected a wonderful bunch of people around me, which are in their own ways, in all of their specialisms, vastly better than me, which is exactly how it should be. I very much enjoy that support. So I have core to the engineering is a couple of relatively recent graduates in their mid-20s. They've been out of academia now for 2 or 3 years, but they are complete mavericks in the sense that they can turn their hands to anything. Technically and academically, they're excellent, but also they're the kind of people that, you get a tire blowout on the way to an event and they will work out how you can improvise, to solve it when you realize the jack is missing from our fairly old event vehicle, for instance. Or we're in the mountains of Arizona for the GoPro shoot. I mentioned Arizona already. Yeah. And we're wondering why even the lightest of the 3 of us aren't getting off the ground, and we can work out all the different measures we can take, including taking the pod cover, debris covers off the engines to help them with the airflow, the very meager airflow, just that ever so small amount to help boost the thrust. fast. And, they're the kind of people that can really think on their feet. But even better than that, those are two of my best pilots as well. So we've ended up with this really neat team from a technical point of view. And there is a broader group beyond the three core of us. But they can do so much, whether it's filming some cinematic sequence or editing some wonderful piece for the media, or flying or doing a piece to camera for the news, or coding a CAN bus control system for a new experimental suit, or indeed doing additive sympathetic CAD design for the latest suits. You can kind of vaguely see one sitting back there. All of that structure is 3D printed now. So we've gone sort of rich, deep capability, not quite savant level capability from some of my team, but they are a master of a number of different skills and very close and intimate to the evolution of the suit. So from the technical point of view, those guys are core. I've got a couple of folks on the commercial side and events side. There's two women who have been, again, with me right from the beginning, who have gone from everything from organizing shipping containers to go to Bermuda for our race series that was postponed and was supposed to be going live 2 weeks ago, but to organize how you do all that, to getting my equipment out of any one of the 30 countries around the world if there's been a last minute hitch from a technical point of view. Or so it is a really eclectic bunch, often from quite varied backgrounds, that bring together a whole range of skills, but often those skills overlap in a positive way, which means that they can fill in for each other and have a deep appreciation for each other's domains. That's quite key as well. So really, to answer your question, the core team is about half a dozen, and there's a wider group of 12 to 20 spread around the world that often do kind of part-time support for us. I mean, there's people like the former director of the F-35 development program as a former chief test pilot, my wider team. We've been so privileged in having such amazing people like that reach out over the last 3 years, and just with this almost childlike urge to be part of this journey. Again, a massive win for what is effectively still a small business.
Absolutely. Now, tell us about maybe perhaps a time when things didn't go the way you wanted to. And whenever I see your videos, you're flying over a city, you're flying over whatever. I'm like, what if the suit stops working for whatever reason? It just stops. Tell us about maybe a time when something of that sort happened, or you were like, oh my God, what's happening? But then you came out of it. Just for us to understand what the experience is to be flying up in the air.
So our ethos is quite clear in this. So innovation is all about failure, to be honest. It's all about going and stepping out, doing something that hasn't been done before, and critically learning from all the mistakes and being able to get back up again from failure. If you go and decide you're going to build a 1,000 horsepower jet suit and you have a go with version 1, fire it up and go to 200 feet, and as you say, learn the hard way that there's a problem with what you're doing, you're not going to get to have another go if you've gone up to 200 feet. So our ethos is very clear. Take the risk, but very quickly analyze what is the worst that can happen if that risk manifests. And if that risk means that you're not going to be able to recover from a physical injury or death, obviously, financial impact that you can't recover from, or a reputational impact because you've been stupid. The number of times I've looked at an event and I've been flying around for an audience and I've seen like a bus go by, 200 meters, 300 meters the other side of the event. And I thought, it'd be really cool to go and land on the bus, surf the bus, and then come back again. It'd probably go quite viral. But, a quick sense check, and I'm not 20 anymore, is, am I really going to be allowed to go and do many more of these events if I could build a reputation for being fast and loose with, the respect for the event organizers? Well, no. So it's reputation, financial, and most critically, safety. If we can't recover from a risk manifesting in any three of those areas, we don't do it. So you'll notice that we don't fly massively high. I mean, even over water, we'll fly 30, 40, 50 feet over water. But in every instance, we analyze, if you got a failure at that moment, can you get back up again? And it's a subtle difference from some of the other flying devices you see out there. We always assume the worst. We always assume that we could get a completely unfathomable failure. And therefore, for instance, our race series is all going to be over water, and for that reason, that it means it keeps it safe. In fact, actually, your question is very opportune, because on our YouTube channel at Gravity Industries, we are now going back through the archive and pulling out lots of clips, including, we haven't published it yet, but an episode that's going to be entirely focused on fails. On my keynotes I do all over the world, I cover these, and they always end up being the most popular part of the talk. We've kept all the fails, all the crashes. No one's ever hurt themselves, but they look quite spectacular and dramatic, and they resonate, I think, a little in some people's minds with those clips that you see in the first Marvel Iron Man film, of where the Downey Jr. character is smacking into the walls of his wonderful man cave. Some of them are a little bit like that, but not quite as dramatic.
Incredible. I know you're very busy, Richard, and you're printing something right now. You're in your workshop. I don't want to take all of your time.
That's all right.
I do want to ask you about the future. We're connected together because of our good friend John Schroeder. You've written a piece in Aftershock, and Alvin Toffler wrote the book 50 years ago. 50 years ago. I can't even imagine 50 years ago. I'm not 50, so it's like so back for me. Same for you probably. And what did Toffler see back in the day? And he could predict, and he could say, hey, this is what will happen to the world. It's mind-blowing. Incredible. I want to ask you, what what are you seeing emerge out of your work in the next 15 to 20 years? What kind of a world do you see happen? What kind of cities do you see evolve? What you're doing?
Well, I mean, I'll tackle the obvious question that might be in some of the listeners' minds around, do I harbor an ambition that everybody's going to be flying around in jet suits and taking the kids to school and going to the shops in jet suits when we're allowed out? Maybe it's a good way of socially distancing at the moment. And the answer is no at the moment, because they are, that machine there, and there's 6 sitting around there, there's another one down there. They are all 1,000 horsepower. They produce about 115, 120 decibels of sound. A bit like a very high-end motorbike. They can be safe if you know what you're doing with them, but if you don't, then there is the opportunity to hurt yourself quite readily. So hence we train people properly and all that sort of stuff. But it's not as simple as just jumping in a car, turning the key and going. However, the very first motor cars were considered noisy, smelly and inefficient, and were joked at compared to looking at the incumbent technology, which was a horse. Look where that technology's got to. So our focus is training clients, doing events, and particularly building our big race series, with which everybody will hopefully enjoy the content from when we're allowed out to Bermuda for the belated event that was due to happen a couple of weeks ago. I think we can reinvent a whole new form of Marvel-esque aerial Formula One, if you like, that can tour around water locations all over the world. Anyway, that's another story. If a byproduct of all of that evolution and all of that public awareness and things like battery technology hugely enhancing, then maybe a new, very raw form, almost Da Vinci form of flight, which means I can put on the absolute minimalist amount of equipment and then just go anywhere in 3-dimensional space. I think we're about the closest out there to delivering that. So maybe that could evolve into more of a mainstream thing. So that's in terms of personal mobility and flight. We've got a watching brief, but it's not our focus at the moment. More broadly, I mean, to answer your question, I think actually this current trauma around the virus is probably going to teach us more about where the future's going than anything. I think the fact that so many people are getting so familiar with communicating like this, I think that's going to change society hugely. I think we're going to end up with people not shopping when, rafts of the more elderly generations are now all online shopping and talking to their grandkids online. And I think it's going to accelerate us probably a decade over 2020 to a position where people are going to reevaluate, why do they physically need to go on holiday and physically need to be next to their work and physically need to live in a certain location in a dense, crowded, expensive city? I think we're going to shift probably to become a physically more lonely community, but then that's the onus is on the technology to make, this interaction we're having now feel ever more real, better resolution, better voice. The fact that I have to look up here at the camera when really you're there and I'm here, all of these subtleties, which I know in the corporate world, I remember in BP that we, some really neat video conferencing systems that would even actually remove the parallax aspects to video conferencing. So I think that would be my best guess of the answer. I think the way that we interact as human beings, whether it's for work or leisure, is going to change. And the virus lockdown is shining a light on where we're going to go, for better or worse.
Thank you. Do you think from a technological perspective, if you look at some of the must-have, absolutely necessary things you need for a flying suit to use is probably fuel that you're using. But what about different technologies? I don't know. What about battery technology? What about nuclear power? Just like Stark uses it.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on the nuclear thing for a minute. So I often stand on stage and talk about jet engines, gas turbines, which is what we use, being about the most energy dense form of propulsion out there. And to be clear, I mean an engine that takes fuel and produces X amount of thrust for Y mass. So, the little engines we use are about 2 kilos, so 4 or 5 pounds, and they put out 22 kilos or more like 50 pounds of thrust. That ratio is insane. Now, they do consume a lot of fuel to make up the gap there. But I got stopped once at a talk where somebody actually did afterwards in the questions say, actually, you're wrong. The most energy dense engine, if you like, is a nuclear reactor. They do tend to weigh an awful lot, but put out an astronomical amount of power as well. Anyway, no, I don't think, if you could get, if you could crack cold, fusion, so fusion rather than fission, if you could crack fusion, then somewhere long down the list of things you go and do with that after mainstream power generation for no waste and no real fuel consumption might be the miniaturization of it. And then maybe, yes, you'd head another big leap towards the Tony Stark world. But no, it's a long way off, I think, unfortunately.
What about battery technology?
Yeah, so more realistically is batteries. So we've built somewhere in the background, somewhere, I can't think where, maybe there's an example of a bit of an electric turbine up there. We have built an electric version of a jet suit, and it uses big electric ducted fans. They are electric motors, with electric fans on them, and with a big bunch of LiPo batteries. And it is tough because the energy density of a lithium polymer battery is about 60 times worse than fuel, so jet fuel or diesel or gasoline. So in other words, you need, let's say for a pound or a kilo of jet fuel, you need 60 pounds of battery to contain the same energy, which is a real pain. So we have just about got off the ground. We did in a quite amusing way. We solved the problem slightly by just making the pilot very, very much lighter. So I used used then one of my kids, they're now 11 and 13. I used at the time my 9-year-old on a safety tether, to be clear. And he managed to bounce around like he's on the moon with this big electric noisy fan thing. It was more of a line in the sand, marked where we are now. And as people like Mr. Musk advance down the route of electric cars and everything else electric, including planes, there will be an ever-increasing number of options out there, and we're ready to hoover those up as they come. But for now, it's tough. It's really tough to beat diesel or jet fuel and a gas turbine.
Incredible. Richard, I want to let you go because I know it's time. Give us some parting advice on how do you think bigger than your circumstances? How do you create something larger than life?
I think there's a bit about a process to this. I think there's a number of things I throw out there. So one is think like a child. You know, you have it beaten out of you at school and at college and whatever. Silly things. Just lining up in your mind. How looking at something, thinking how it looks like an animal, or wondering why some street light doesn't quite line up with the edge of your window pane when you're glancing out of the window, not listening to class. We're always told to shut up and look at the textbook and listen and regurgitate what you've been taught. Actually, all the big breakthroughs are staring out the window and thinking in a way no one's ever thought before. They're taking inspiration and letting those ideas just lurk around with each other in your mind in a way that no one else has been mad enough to imagine. It doesn't say on the guidebook you should go and put a jet engine on your arm, and there's a lot of good reasons why you think it's going to tear your arm off, and the gyroscopic momentum and the fact that it's going to flail around like a hose pipe and all these things. Actually, there's good physics reasons why they don't, but the conventional received wisdom was that they would be impossible. Well, actually, if you just step out there and go and play in a safe way and cover off those risk rules, just get out there and think like a child and play and explore and imagine and let your imagination go crazy, and then work out how quickly and realistically you can get off the idea into actually testing the concept. A little secret over there is a baby carrying rucksack back stuck to some plywood with some door hinges, and I can't tell you any more than that, but I was flying that 24 hours ago.
Wow.
And it's using door hinges and plywood. And because, we're 3 years in, we're, certainly on paper, a multi-million-dollar company, having been enjoyed by millions of people around the world, but that does not stop us from going and using plywood and door hinges to test the new generation of suit, which is frankly insane compared to what we do now. And the key to that, like I say, is not being afraid to go and safely test new concepts still.
Amazing. Incredible. Richard, I can't thank you enough for being part of the InCon show and the podcast and being a contributor on Aftershock. We definitely will keep on following your progress and seeing your amazing work. Thank you so much for being in.
Thank you very much. And just I've got it here. Look, there you go. It's sitting here as well.
There you go. All right.
Yeah. So thanks very much. See you then.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. You take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very much. Bye. Hey friend, this is Ian Khan. If you liked what you saw on my video, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel and be inspired every single day with innovative content that keeps you fresh, updated, and ready for the future. For more information, also visit my website at iankhan.com.